shift gears now and put the spotlight on what's happening with Sterlite Technologies or STL, given that the Bharat Net tenders are on the cards. Is that going to aid the company? We've got Ankit Agarwal, the MD, joining in. Ankit, thanks so much for taking time out. Now, recently, the government has approved this 1.4 lakh for the next phase of the Bharat Net. Have any tenders been floated? And if not, as and when they are floated, can you just tell us what kind of potential order flow it would give to the company?
Yes, good morning. Thank you for having me on the show. So I think it's a very exciting project, which is really spearheaded by our Prime Minister. The intent is to approve, as Cabinet has approved about 1.4 lakh crores. The intent is to cover all 6.4 lakh villages across the country. So it's a massive undertaking. So far, around 2 to 2.5 lakh villages have been covered. So almost 4 lakh villages need to be connected, and very clearly by high-speed quality fiber. So that's something that is a big project for the entire industry. STL has participated in the first phase and second phase, both in terms of supply of fiber optics, supply of the cables, as well as large-scale fiber deployment, and then now maintenance of the networks. So this is something that is quite positive. We are also very well placed in terms of our capacities on the fiber optics, but also in terms of our deployment experience to take this project forward. In terms of timing, probably in the next few months, the further details will get released. And certainly looking at the government's timeline, they're looking at probably between 2.5, 3 years to deploy this fiber optics. And then after that, probably 7 years of maintenance.
Okay, fair enough. Now, recently, the government also imposed ADD on the optical fiber, cable fiber. Post that, are prices at par with domestic players? And owing to this, how much of the demand shift are you expecting now on the domestic side?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I think it's a very, very positive move by the Indian government and Ministry of Finance and DGTR to take this forward. So we really appreciate their efforts to recognize the dumping that was happening, particularly from the Chinese, Koreans, and from Indonesia. And then post this, there has been dumping duty that has been levied for a period of 5 years. This is again positive development for the Indian manufacturers, including ourselves. From our perspective, this is still early days. We'll continue to watch in terms of the pricing in India. But certainly the expectation is that there should be lower dumping now from these countries. One thing I would highlight is a very recent example which has happened in Europe, where after there was anti-dumping from Chinese players applied to Chinese players in Europe, they found that in fact Chinese continue to dump and absorb some of the dumping margins. And in fact, recently, a couple of weeks back, Europe has doubled the anti-dumping duty on the Chinese players. So this is something that we're watching for, but we are positive that they should support the pricing. And overall, the other point was there was also low quality fiber coming into the country, which would impact the quality of our networks over the next 20, 30 years. So that's another area where we believe it's important to minimize this low quality fiber coming in.
Okay, fair enough. Also, if you could just update us on how fiber prices are trending on a month-on-month or on a year-on-year basis. Has there been an uptick in prices?
As I said, so far it's been stable, which is good. I think from a demand perspective, certainly all the announcements around acceleration of 5G is positive for us. We are a key supporter of the 5G deployment in India, both for Jio, Airtel, as well as for other internet service providers in the country. And on top of that, as we see Bharat Net starting to roll out probably from next year onwards, I think that's another positive trigger. The third part that I would want to touch on is the hyperscalers and the data center players. We believe there'll be close to $6 to $7 billion of investment from large players, that we see investing in India and building large-scale data centers. They will start requiring a good amount of fiber optics dedicated for them, for low latency and high quality networks that they require.
Now, telcos are nearing 5G coverage. So how many of these orders have you received so far? How much are you expecting going forward?
Absolutely. So we won't be able to specify, but I think we are very, very active. Just to give example with some of the operators, we actually partner with them over 10 to 12 circles, large states across the country for both their long distance fiber requirements as well as within the city for fiber to the home, fiber to the enterprise applications. So this is something that we've been very, very actively partnering with them. We actually see that probably next 4 to 5 years, we do continue seeing demand for the fiber optics, because one is just coverage, but from my own perspective, the actual capacity that 5G promises in terms of speeds as well as low latency, I think that will still come through even more over the next 3 to 4 years. And we need probably 80 to 90% of our towers to get fiberized, which is currently only 35% currently in India.
Now, there has been a slowdown in North America that led you to cut your FY24 guidance. How are things moving now? Has demand revived? And other than North America, how has the demand been in the other geographies?
Yeah, good question. So I think that still continues. We're watching it closely in terms of our conversations. Happy to share, we recently announced a partnership with a company called Windstream, as part of their wholesale division is doing large scale fiber rollouts. So the partnerships continue, but as we shared in our results, there is significant inventory in the US across the board, and as the customers continue to pare down that inventory, probably we think it'll take another 4 to 6 months at least. And as that inventory comes down, then the demand in US should come back. We have set up capacity as well in the US in terms of our cable capacity. So that's being viewed quite positively by US customers. And it places us well once the demand comes back. In terms of other geographies, we already touched on India, which I'm positive about. But Europe, other places of Middle East and Australia continue to be looking strong.
Okay, what about debt? Because that's been a concern. How much do you see your debt lowering by the rest of FY24, and what will your leverage stand at?
So I wouldn't call it a concern as much as a focus. We are focused on reducing the debt, taking our net debt to EBITDA to 2.5 times. I think that's an important focus for us. We are probably paying around 350, 370 crores of interest per year. So the clarity is definitely there to focus on fewer businesses, generate cash, and then reduce our interest costs.
Okay, and what about the services business demerger? Can you walk us through the rationale of that, and what's the timeline in terms of when you expect this process to complete?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we shared recently, the whole thought process has been that essentially we have two separate types of businesses. One is focused on manufacturing, high-tech manufacturing of optic fiber cables and accessories, where we largely serve global markets, including Europe and US. Which is focused on manufacturing. And then the services business is more in terms of network deployment and system integration, which is more, say, working capital heavy. So these are two very different businesses in that sense, and only overlap being in India. So from that perspective, we thought there would be different financial profile, there would be different investors, and also from the employee perspective, these are different skill sets. So that was a thought process to take the demerger forward. Currently, we believe that it should happen by Q1 of next financial year.
All right, good to have you. Thanks so much for taking time out. Gotten a lot more clarity on how business is shaping up. So thanks so much for those details.
Thank you.